Now, we have talked on Lemon's World about muscle cars, and we have talked about pony cars, but one thing we have not talked about is the both and neither AMC Javelin.
Specifically, we are talking about Sesame Street Outlaws and their 74 Javelin. You may remember the Sesame Street Outlaws as having run Elmo-themed Saturns, which they've been doing since 2008, and they also had a bad BMW 2800, as though there's some other kind, and Grover, the Rover P6. A few years ago, they dug up a really crusty final year Javelin for Lemon. Now, it was not the first Javelin in Lemons, that was the Rattlesnake Electric Sport guys, which was basically a pro touring car. The Sesame Street Outlaws Javelin is not that at all.
Team co-captains, Manny and Chris, who are also Lemon's judges occasionally, they're old rear-wheel drive, big American V8 muscle guys going way back, and they decided they needed to get a better fix than that Rover because, well, it was a Rover. The engine, by the way, still living in a Triumph because why wouldn't you?
They had known about this Javelin sitting idly in a friend's garage in New York, and they figured it would need to go at some point. And indeed, it finally needed to go. So they made an offer, dragged it out. It had a little bit of surface rust, but it was totally complete, and it started right up with fresh gas and a battery.
Given the color and the condition, Manny just decided, you know what, this car, Oscar the Grouch. They ran with it, painted Oscar on the top, took it racing.
They won a judge's choice in one of their early races, but the original 304 V8 bit the dust pretty quickly. Now, this is Lemon, so anything that's worth doing is worth doing more, so they found a junkyard Grand Wagoneer and grabbed the AMC 360 out of it, which is basically the same block, and tossed it directly in.
As they've raced it over the years, they've gradually improved it, which mostly means bringing in parts from other car companies, which, to be fair, by this point was what AMC was also doing. Probably unwisely, they were particularly tapping GM. Bell housing, 5-speed, alternator, power steering, rear brakes. But not to play favorites, Ford also came in. Cobra front brakes, Mustang front suspension, 17-inch wheels. They did, however, stick with the AMC differential, and how's that been going?
Jay, I feel like something's missing from that list.
Hey man, we should call that the Hellcat.
And they added aftermarket dual ignition so that when one craps out, which it will, the next one will work.
The rear suspension still has the original leaf springs, and Chris says, despite that, it's still surprisingly nimble for a 3,100-pound car. While the added power steering does keep your arms from overworking on the racetrack, the unpowered brakes mean it's always leg day in the Javelin. It does burn 12 gallons of gas per hour, so it's not exactly cheap to run a V8 car in Lemons, but it's hard to top the miles per smile, or smiles per mile, or whatever it is.
That car has taken them, not surprisingly, to an IOE, but it has also taken them to an I Got Screwed just to keep their muscle car egos from getting too big. It is still an AMC.
Eventually, the Sesame Street Outlaws plan to give it the Mark Donahue Trans Am Champion treatment. But for the time being, you can probably spot the exaggerated bulging fenders and the surface rust on Oscar the Javelin at East Coast races.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?